Hello, long time no see. I thought that I could make another video here to discuss the hometown essay. A lot of this should be not entirely new territory just because we've talked about this assignment since the very first day. So I'm hoping that there won't be too many surprises. But let's begin with a conversation about the assignment itself. So under assignments, you'll find Hometown Essay Draft 1. You'll note that because this is one of our more final major assignments for the class, that I have a full rubric here rather than just some guidelines. Let's see if I can get this open. So many files. Okay, so basically, I understand that we're not creative writers, right? This is not a creative writing class. However, our project is taking something that we have been reading and studying and analyzing all semester and trying our hand at producing it. So let's think about how one does that and what are the major components that we need to be considering. So first, I have structure and plot on here. Basically, we want it to be easy to follow. We want relevant material that's included, so we don't have like random tangents where you're like, what does that have to do with anything? I expect that there's going to be some characters in this that are going to have some play upon the narrative itself, right? So they're not just going to be like dumped in and then we don't ever hear from them again. Scene and exposition. So exposition is going to be just kind of like your summary of what's happening, whereas scene is going to be, he said, she said, he moved outside, she did this, right? It's going to let us see these two characters do something as opposed to telling us about them doing something. So kind of having a balance between those. And there are going to be places where as readers, we're going to want to see it, right? And style and mechanics, this is going to be the territory of like spelling, punctuation, grammar. You know the drill at this point. And the basics here are, if you aren't turning it in by the deadline, if you're just not following directions, these are going to be situations where we get into the F territory, but we should all be able to avoid that, I think. So one of the things that's kind of like come up periodically is that people seem to feel uncomfortable with style and mechanics, or they're not sure of commas, or what a preposition is, or like, I understand that grammar is scary and that oftentimes we've been told we don't know how to do the thing. And I myself believe myself to be above the law of the comma, especially when I'm writing a creative piece. And so what I wanted to point out to you is that there is this lovely free website. There's a paid version. You don't have to do that. It's called Grammarly. When I am tired and I need to just have another set of eyes or someone else to kind of like go through something with a fine-tooth comb, I will load something into Grammarly. Like, totally admit it, that it is really useful if you just want like someone to catch some errors and you're like, I'm pretty sure I've done everything right, but I don't know. You just basically go in here, create a new document, and then you copy and paste into here, and it will like automatically populate and be like, oh, did you mean these two words? Here's why we think this might be wrong. Like, they'll give kind of little bubbles that will pop up that will tell you why they think that you should look again. So in terms of just like sentence level errors, this is a really useful way to like catch those in advance. So be thinking about that if you've gotten some comments about clarity, awkwardness, clunkiness, as I've been reading prompt 1, 2, and then soon prompt 3. Okay, so hometown essay draft 1. We've been talking about this. It's going to be based upon your hometown, or perhaps like a hometown region, or even just a place where you live for a period of time, focusing on a crime. Doesn't necessarily have to be when you were living there. But the thing that I think is most important about this is that I can Google a crime, right? Like, any of your peers can go and look up a crime online and be like, what are the main details, right? Don't turn in Wikipedia pages wherein you exclusively are saying, this person, they did the thing, they went here, end of story, right? What creative nonfiction is doing is that it has this component of the story. Here's what's happening. Here are the pieces you must know in terms of plot. And then here's my take on it, right? Here's the reflection. So story plus reflection. So making sure that you are remembering that your eyes are the unique thing that you have to offer. And we are all going to have different takes. Obviously, Lacey Johnson has a perspective on justice that has taken some students aback. And in reading your discussion board post, some people seem really quite surprised that she is just so like not vengeful in thinking about her past relationships. So everyone has some unique perspective, and we've obviously been covering that this semester. So what about your perspective? This is your space where you can tell us why this story is important, what you think we should be looking at, and how exactly this story really connects to larger issues. So no story is ever happening in a vacuum where it's just this tidy little community and those are the only humans that are affected. It's always pointing outward to other larger issues that are social, political, there's so much that it's in conversation with. So tell us, what exactly do you want to talk about in relation to this particular story? Okay, so basically, let's see, you might consider how it's shaped the community, what it says about human behavior. There's tons of room for interpretation here, but you must tell us a story. It should be written beginning, middle, and end. It should not have like any like weird like look to my blog for chapter number 2. So we have the whole piece in front of us, and it should be polished and ready to be workshopped. So your peers should not be struggling to understand the content. It should be pretty fine-tuned. And remember, this is due a week from today. 2,000 words. I think in Microsoft Word, Times New Roman, 250, 300 words is about a page. So you got a big chunk to get writing if you haven't already started. So polished, if you struggle with polished, try Grammarly. Another thing that's come up in conferences is students have been asking, well, we're doing prompt number 3, which is based in research. Does that mean I need to have citations in my final hometown essay? And the answer is no. We have not read anything this semester that's been a creative piece, which has brought in citations. So while I know that that is like your training and it maybe hurts your heart to not be able to include that, it's not required. So what I do in situations like that where I want to have some kind of credibility rather than just being like, boom, data, I will say, according to such and such institute in a study about whatever, like, and I'll put that in with like a kind of like a lead in that tells the reader where this intel is coming from or how I found it, or, you know, it was late at night and I was doing a Google search and I was really surprised to come across this. So that they know kind of how that intel came to me specifically. So yeah, don't feel compelled to put in MLA format or anything on the final. And the MLA format that we're doing for prompt number 3 is really just to have us be thinking about how to stretch beyond this story and get to outside issues and larger like touching points. Okay, so no citations. What else? I do check for the word count, so make sure that you are hitting that 2,000 words. If you are struggling and you are panicked because this is due in a week, reach out to me. I sometimes can help with like a little bit of a window. I suppose I could probably do a day, maybe 2. It would just depend. I don't know that I can do 2. It's going to depend on what workshop day you're scheduled for, basically. But reach out to me in advance. Be looking at the calendar and saying, what other stuff do I have coming up this week? So that if you need more time, you can ask for it. But you have to ask for it in advance. It doesn't work if you're in the territory of like, oh shit, that thing was 2 days ago. Would you take it now? This is 100 points of your grade. I really would like for everyone to do well on this. At least I think it's 100 points. Let me double check here. Let's see. Yes, 100 points. So please make sure that you're thinking about that and thinking about your schedule for next week. So my final thing that I needed to talk about, and it's because it came up in prompt number 2 as I was grading them. So we need to talk about POV. Maybe this isn't true for everyone, but I want to just kind of like cut it off where I can a little bit early if need be. When you use first person POV. So I said, I think, I believe, I see the world this way. You are 100% only ever allowed to talk about yourself, your own voice. This is how I see things if you're writing nonfiction. If you get into the territory where you say, I'd like to imagine what it's like to be in this headspace, then you, first person, can say, I am imagining what this person was thinking in their final moments, or why they made this choice, but you can't actually say, I am doing this, this is how I see the world, and pretend you are someone else. If you do that, it's fiction. And because this is a intro to nonfiction class, like, we have to stay within the genre. So be thinking about that going forward, that the only circumstance when you should be using first person I is if you are sharing your own thoughts. You can't necessarily pretend that you are a character and say, I'm going to speak for them, because that gets into a really slippery slope with ethics, which it becomes fiction. And if you did a fiction class, then sure, absolutely. But for our purposes, first person should only be your voice, your person. If you have other questions, feel free to shoot them to me in email. I think that's all for right now. Okay, that's all. All right. I will hopefully see you soon, even if it's just virtually. Reach out if you need me. Bye.